Good morning, and welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests. My name is Ginger Fury, and I am the Director of Congregational Life. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. We acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielina Tongva peoples, the traditional caretakers of the lands and waters of this campus. With respect for the rights and wisdom of Indigenous people, we acknowledge our harmful colonial histories and commit to decolonizing our own practices, to learning new ways of being in community with each other in good relationship with the Indigenous peoples of this land and the land itself. Today's service is led by Senior Minister, Reverend Dr. Omega Burkhart, with me and Executive Director Elizabeth Richard Campo participating. Our music today is led by Associate Music Director Wells Lang. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Families with young children are always welcome in our sanctuary, and there is additional seating in the entry foyer of the narthex. I have 3 brief announcements today. Next week, we kick off our spring worship series with Fire Communion service. While there will be no childcare during the service, all spiritual exploration classes for children and youth will return to regular schedule. We will end January and begin February with an all-congregation reading of Psalms for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers. This book is widely available for purchase, borrow, and to listen on your favorite apps. The church also has 3 copies for checkout in the entryway of Neighborhood House. If you check out a book, please return it promptly. Lastly, this afternoon we will be having our Hanukkah hang at 4 p.m. in the living room. All are welcome to join us and encouraged to bring food if you choose. More extensive announcements, as well as our order of service this morning, are available as a link in the Sunday email. Our order of service is also visible online by scanning the QR code on the back of your hymnal with your phone camera. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Dr. Omega Burkhart. I am a femme-presenting woman, now in my 6th decade. I just celebrated a birthday. I have silver, why not? That's right. I have silvering hair. Today I'm wearing a gray jacket along with a colorful stole to represent the festivities of the season. I welcome all of you to this space. I welcome our folks who are joining us online this morning, or if you're watching in the future, we are glad that you are with us here this morning. Come, come, whoever you are. That might be familiar to you. These words beckon us to join in community as we gather. These familiar words of a translation of Rumi's words are then fashioned into an invitation by my colleague, the Reverend Ian Riddell, who asks, do you hear that voice calling you? Do you hear that voice calling us? That voice which calls us together here today in this room made holy by our presence and by the sacred breath we share in our singing and speaking and silence. That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone and that we are linked to all other life, linked to each other and all other life, woven into a vast tapestry of existence of which we are a powerful and integral and holy part. And just as we have been called together here today, we act as the voice and the heart, the hands of another call. The call to walk with the wanderers, the call to sing and dance with the worshipers, to proclaim the memory of those who have taken their leave. We are called to wrap the despairing and the broken in the arms of love and community. And we are called to hold the hands of all of us who are broken and who have broken our vows. And we call us back again and again to the covenant and to the work of justice and humility and steadfast faithfulness. Today we gather for a special service that varies a bit from our regular format. So those of you who come every weekend, you will notice the format that is a little bit different. Those of you who are new to us today, we welcome you to this conversation. We're closing out 2024 and heading into 2025, a year full of promise and maybe some tough unknowns. We have crafted for you today a State of the Union, that's 2 U's. For those of you new to us today, Union with UUnion. State of the Union service for you today. I'm pleased to be joined by 2 of our dear colleagues here, my 2 colleagues here, Director of Congregational Life, Ginger Fury, and Executive Director, Elizabeth Richer Campo, will be joining us to discuss what an adaptive vision for the future might be in our congregation. In our conversation later this morning, we will outline some of the changes that have happened here at Neighborhood Church over the past year, as well as an update on our collaborative leadership model and the visionary work that we hope to bring into being with you, the congregational leaders of this church. While we won't have an official talk back session this morning or questions, we just don't have time. We do encourage you to jot down your questions. You can hand us some paper after the service with your questions on it. You can write us an email. There are papers and pens on each table by the offering boxes. Hand those to us, write us an email, and if there are a collection of questions that are similar, we might address those in an upcoming newsletter. My colleague reminds us that it has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today. But we are here today because we are mindful of that past and because we have hope for the future. We want to practice this faith as a fulfilling manifestation of that promise. For this, we are here together today. So, my friends, come yet again, come and let us worship together this morning. Please rise and body your spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn this morning, hymn 1010, We Give Thanks.
There are many ways we love and support our community. Today, the funds from our sharing of the plate go to the Minister's Discretionary Fund. This fund is used to support members and friends of the neighborhood church community in times of need, whether an electric bill payment, groceries, a bus ticket, or money for medications. The fund can be used to help with scholarships for a youth or adult to attend a conference as well, and it is a fund funded solely from designated voluntary contributions. We thank you for sharing with this community. You can donate by putting your donation in one of the designated boxes during the music or after the service. There's a donation box here in the front, behind the back center row, and in the narthex on the table. You may rise during the music to put your donation in the box if you wish, or you can use the information on the screen to donate by phone. Please extend help to those in our neighborhood who may need assistance reaching the donation boxes. Thank you for giving generously.
And we are boldly heading into that new year with some passionate music. Thank you. Yeah. At the beginning of this church year, we had a board retreat. We met with our board, your elected board of trustees here. And as we were framing the work that we'd be doing together this year, I had a conversation with him about the challenges of understanding the difference between adaptive and technical leadership. And I know that for many of you, this doesn't sit in your heart of where we are as a church community, but it is really important to frame the work that we're doing as a delicate balance between adaptive work and technical work in the fulfilling of the call as a spiritual community. So today we're going to be talking about some of the ways that we are living into that as a staff team that is in relationship with you as our congregation, and some of the ways that the work that is happening here at Neighborhood Church is representative of the work that is happening in our larger congregation and what some of those trends might be. So I'm offering you a reading today from, and many of you, I know you're going to rush right out and buy this, The Practice of Adaptive Leadership. It is actually a fundamental text for those of you who are interested in systems and systems theory. But bear with me as I give this reading, and then I'm going to give an example of what this means. And then at that point, I'll invite our guests up and we'll have a conversation about what this might mean for our work together. Adaptation is a process of conservation as well as losses. This is adaptation. Although the losses of change are the hard part, adaptive change is mostly, but not all, about change. The question is not only, of all we care about, what must be given up to survive and thrive going forward? Not just that, but also, of all that we care about, what elements are essential and must be preserved into the future, or we will lose precious values, core competencies, and lose who we are. As in nature, a successful adaptation enables us as an organization or community to take the best from its traditions, identity, and history, to take that into the future. Now, they make a differentiation between adaptive, and technical this way, and this is what we'll be exploring today. The most common cause of a failure in leadership is produced by treating adaptive challenges as if they were technical problems. So I'd like to hold that. Adaptive challenges as if they were technical problems. So what's the difference? While technical problems may be very complex and critically important, like replacing a faulty heart valve during cardiac surgery, they have known solutions that can be implemented by current know-how. Those are technical solutions. They can be resolved through an application of authoritative expertise and through the organization's current structures, procedures, and ways of doing things. On the other hand, adaptive challenges can only be addressed through changes in people's priorities, beliefs, habits, and loyalties. Making progress requires going beyond any authoritative expertise to mobilize discovery, shedding certain entrenched ways, tolerating losses, and generating a new capacity to thrive. So an example that I often give, this is not from the book, and my staff has heard me give, our staff has heard me give this example before, is if there is an area on campus, for example, we have a certain trash can that continues to overflow. And we notice that the squirrels and the ravens are very happy about that. And someone says, well, now the trash can here always tends to overflow. A technical solution would be to change the trash and put a new liner in it. That's not wrong. But an adaptive solution would say, now why is this particular trash can always overfilling? Is it the placement? Do we use too many non-recyclable materials? How can we change the system to make this less of a problem? So today we're going to be exploring what the intentionality and the relationship is between some of the visionary work that we're doing right now, which is adaptive and technical. So I ask you to hold those two in your mind and in your heart as we are invited into this conversation today to talk a little bit about the state of our union. Elizabeth and Ginger, would you like to come up? So I'm very pleased to be joined up here this morning in this conversational format with my colleagues. And many of you know Ginger and know Elizabeth, but it's an opportunity to hear from folks who aren't often on this side of the congregational life spectrum. So I'd like to take this opportunity before we delve into the conversation to have them introduce themselves and to talk a little bit about their roles and what they see as their primary lines of accountability right now at Neighborhood Church.
All right, so good morning. I am Ginger. I'm the Director of Congregational Life. And so my role here is to focus on membership and supporting our visitors as they are coming in and the educational process of what it means to become a member, answering their questions and connecting them on that pathway to formally becoming a member. I also focus on our overall program areas. So what is the connection between what is being offered in different areas of the church, and we'll talk a little bit more about this today, but what are those larger trends for engagement look like and what our priorities are in that. So a lot of work being done in how to support what's going on during services, how to support what's going on with our youth, how to support what's going on in our social justice world, and looking at the overall engagement of congregational life as a whole. I am also the line of accountability for our communications coordinator, who will be starting with us in January. So I support overseeing the newsletter and website and social media and any sort of communications that you're receiving from the church. As I move into my now director role, I will have an assistant supporting me and who I will be supporting in crafting those communications. So you might hear a little less directly from me, but I am still supporting that person in the vision of that. I am also the line of accountability for our young adult group and our part-time staff who supports our young adult ministry, which is for folks in 20s and 30s age range, and again, how to be a bridge for connecting them into our larger work of the church. Yeah.
And we'll talk in just a minute. Some of you have known Ginger for quite a while, and she's had a role change. So we'll talk a little bit about what some of those specifics are in a few minutes,
sure,
if that's okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Okay. I'm Elizabeth Richer-Campo. I am the executive director here. My role is threefold. I am in charge of the finances, in charge of facilities, and I am accountable for the human resources when it comes to the employed staff here. So it's a human it's a role that is fairly common throughout many industries. I choose to pursue the role in the nonprofit world. I have over 25 years experience in nonprofit management, and in my heart, I love working in nonprofits, and now learning to use those skills within a church environment is wonderful. To work for mission-based is a little bit different. Mission-based management is different from profit-based management, and it feeds my soul to be able to be in a mission-based place. So part of the support that I offer is to make sure that we are within the law, that we remain sustainable, that we remain respectful of the past, that we are realistic about where we are and where we are going in the future. So it is not for this year, it is for the past, present, and future. I see my role as supporting those and supporting not just the members today, but those who came before, and those making sure that neighborhood is sustainable for the future and available, and what you are experiencing now is something that you can make sure is available for generations to come. So that's very important, I think, in a nonprofit, in a mission-based, and in a church. One thing that I did want to mention was that as part of this, because I am now 4 years into working in a church environment and a UU environment, I am part of the AUUA, which is an association of Unitarian Universalist administrators. And we meet regularly to talk about challenges and celebrate each other and give each other support. So I'm aware of what's going on nationally and locally. So that way it helps me as a person, and I think it helps me express where we are really a very strong and vibrant and wonderful church when you can see what's going on throughout the country and be able to follow those trends.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I forgot to mention that I'm also a part of a professional organization called the UUAMP, which is the Unitarian Universalist Association of Membership Professionals. And there are about 75 of us in the Pacific Western region who do this work. And similar to Elizabeth, I collaborate with them often to share ideas and support and gather resources so we have a sense of what's going on.
And I am part of the UUMA, while we're putting all the letters out there with the double U's in there, Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, among some other groups. But I think what you're hearing, or what I'm hearing when you're using this terminology, I heard multiple times the word accountability. We talk a lot about accountability. We're working on understanding our roles here at this church as less hierarchical and more about who are we accountable to, but there is some hierarchy involved in that. We've heard from our congregants in a couple of different ways over this past year, looking for lines of communication. Who do we go to? What do we need to do if we want to contact someone about something? And how can we move forward with the programming or whatnot that we would like to do. So very quickly, I'd like to talk about our structure a little bit. Is that appropriate?
Yeah,
does that feel okay? Because we've talked about accountability, so what does that mean? So in our church, this church adopted a few years ago a collaborative leadership model. And if you're interested in seeing a graphic of this, it's always on the last page of the information that is released about the board meetings, okay, which you can find always on our church calendar and in announcements leading up to board meetings that meet monthly. We have some board members here too. I saw a few. Yeah. There. Those were very small waves. They have a very large, there we go, big waves, big waves. And we have, yeah, and I would say probably, that's right, yes. We have probably 10 or so other folks here who I know have served on the board at some point or another. So our collaborative leadership model has three interlocking circles. And in those circles, the folks who are in those circles have accountability over a certain area. So it is a three-part leadership model. The Board of Trustees, elected by the congregation, is responsible for governance. And governance really is about creation of policies that make sense for a neighborhood church right now and moving into the future. So really holding what is the governance and the financial aspects of this church going forward. And so we have regular meetings monthly, and then two larger congregational meetings where we discuss and approve the policies going forward for the leading of this church. The board is not responsible for some areas like pastoral care, or worship. I am one of those circles. So as the senior minister, my role here is I am accountable. The lines of accountability to me are to the directors level, so Director of Congregational Life, Director of Music, Zenaida Robles, who you all know, who runs a stellar music program here, and the Director of Spiritual Exploration, or Director of Religious Education, depending on how it is phrased. And I also work with our pastoral care team. So everything that falls into those areas, so worship, pastoral care, also supervisory role of those folks who fall into those lines, those fall to me. Elizabeth is the third circle of this important team in our collaborative leadership model, who, as she already described, is accountable for everything with facilities, finances, and human resource administration. So those are how the three circles of our leadership model here are formed. There is an implicit hierarchy in that, and I hesitate to do that, but it is sometimes easier for us to visualize. So as the senior minister, then under that is a director level position, and then the folks who work in all of those teams. And then Elizabeth, as the executive director, then has the folks who work with her in those teams for accountability purposes. And then the board is a separate circle that has specific task force and committees of the board as our policies lay out. So then they have folks who are responsible and accountable to them. Is that helpful? Did I miss anything?
No.
No? Okay, great. It's possible that I would. So a few minutes ago, Ginger, you described a little bit your role now, and that is changing a little bit. Mm-hmm. Would you like to take a minute or two to describe how that role is shifting?
Sure. So several of you who I've had the pleasure of getting to know and who've worked with me in various capacities, in my previous position was focused solely on membership and communications. So I was the one creating the newsletter myself and sending out communications myself and really focusing on the welcome table on Sundays. And there was a smaller scope of work that I was involved in. And so in my new role, what I'm really moving in towards is looking at engagement and some strategic vision for what is it that brings people to church? What is it that gets people to stay at church? What are the needs from you all? What are our national trends? How do we connect with the larger UU world? How do we support the mission and vision of neighborhood church, as well as the work of our denomination as a whole, and then creating, again, those lines of accountabilities and support, whether it's for lay leadership of a particular group or committee that's being offered, or whether it's for other staff, such as our communications coordinator position and supporting that person. So I'm really spending a lot of time focusing on doing some work on what are the needs and how do we get people to be engaged, and spending some time listening and reimagining, and as Reverend Omega was speaking about, those adaptive changes, spending a lot of time in that world, and what are some of the adaptive challenges that we're having, and how can we work to come up with some adaptive solutions to them. What am I missing?
Well, I would ask you, while we're talking about this and the connection, you mentioned, because you are working within a professional group nationally, could you tell us a little bit about what some trends are that are happening, what have happened, both here at Neighborhood, and what, if you care to get out your crystal ball, of what might be happening in the upcoming year as it relates to engagement?
Sure. So we'll start, I guess, with nationally and kind of what the landscape is for that. So as of September 2024, the UUA serves 1,081 congregations and communities, of which Neighborhood is a part of that. So as a whole, membership has trended downwards in the past decade, and membership was about flat this past year as a whole. So it was a 1% decline nationally. Of those 1,000 congregations, there was 416 of them that saw either a slight increase or a large increase. And I am very excited that Neighborhood is one of those 416 that saw an increase in our membership this past year, which was really, really exciting. So there's a lot of work about why that is the case and what we can do to continue that, right? And so something I'm seeing that's really exciting at Neighborhood is we're having a lot of visitors. And to those of you who are visiting us for the first time today, welcome. I don't want to put you in the hot seat. We're glad you're here. But consistently, each Sunday, we see several visitors. There has not been a Sunday pretty much since I've worked here where we haven't had at least one visitor. And several Sundays, we have several. And so I would like to spend some time engaging with you all on how we can get the visitors to turn into members and feel supported by you, and not just me as the membership professional who's standing at the welcome table. But there's a lot of work being done nationally on the fact that what makes Unitarian Universalism so unique is that we are a covenantal faith. So you're entering into a conversation and an agreement on how we are going to be with one another rather than a creedal faith of telling you what you have to believe. And so that is a core piece of why membership is really important. And so we want to balance visitors always being welcome and acknowledging that we serve a very large community. We have connections with the broader Pasadena community, and our ministry extends far beyond our walls on Sunday mornings. And also, it is very important that people who are choosing to be here are entering into that covenantal relationship with us as a formal member. So some of the work that Reverend Omega and I have done this past year is creating our ambassador program, which some of you are a part of. And our Sunday ambassadors are here to help support that. And our goal for that program is linking those visitors and also just newer folks. Doesn't have to be just visitors, but people who are still trying to integrate into our community, having that be a member-to-member or a member-to-visitor relationship that's being built because it's your community. And I'm here to support in guiding that and giving tools for that. But ultimately, that is where the magic happens. And so our ambassador program of this past year has really focused on active listening and hearing out folks, and then being that connection into, have you spoke with Ginger? Have you talked to Elizabeth? Do you know Reverend Omega? Why are you here? How can we support you? What is it that you need? And bringing people in with us. Yeah.
We have some ambassadors here.
We do.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop, actually, and backtrack and say all of you are ambassadors. But we do have some folks who are fulfilling an ambassador role. Those of you who are part of our ambassador team, would you raise your hands? Okay. There you go. Thank you. So I really appreciated how you're highlighting, Ginger, the importance of covenant and what it means to be engaged and how we are serving a larger community. But there is an importance to formalizing your membership process here, because it is about creating a covenantal relationship. That is what we do as Unitarian Universalists. So thank you for that and highlighting some of those trends. I would ask the same question of you, Elizabeth. What kind of trends are you seeing in the work that you're involved with?
Well, to build off of what Ginger's talking about, there is a whole community that we're not seeing right here, right now, but they're here, and that's our community through YouTube. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of engagement.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah. We have a lot of engagement, and I love my stats. So I'm going to pull in some stats about our engagement through YouTube. We have an average of 18 people who are watching live. So they want to be in the community with us together live. And then on recorded, we have an average of 67 people every week watching us recorded. So maybe they're not able to watch live, but they're watching recorded. So there's a large community. We're seeing a lot of growth with our engagement online. And these could be people who are not able to make it for whatever reason, or they do not have a Unitarian church close to them, and so we are their virtual church. They could be people who are sticking their toe in the water and want to become familiar before they come in person. In fact, we're seeing 35% of the people who are coming into our to our YouTube page are coming from the website. So they're looking at the website, they're finding out information, and then they're following that link. So that's really wonderful. We've had 6 new subscribers just this month. We saw a sharp uptick in November, which I think is just a sign that people are looking for a good, safe, welcoming place. And so 46% of our viewers have also subscribed.
Yeah, and that is actually different than the national averages. So as a whole, most UU churches in the country are seeing a very steep decline in online participation across YouTube, Zoom, any online platforms that they're using. So that's very unique to us and very exciting for us, and gives us a lot of curiosity about how to continue to foster that those relationships and that engagement. So we are kind of special in that way.
In fact, these numbers are stronger than they were during the pandemic. We are having more participation virtually than we were when we were 100% virtual. So that's really very exciting, and I think we're just needing to, and in part of our visioning is, it's not just those in the building, it's the community as a whole. So how are we creating what we do here that is not just physically here? So that's part of what we're looking at. And then when we're looking at our future, and I'm going to go kind of towards the HR realm, which is something I don't talk often about. I mean, you hear me talking about numbers and spreadsheets and what's going on with facilities and pledge drives and all of that stuff. But I don't talk about human resources a lot because I don't talk about individuals. That's not appropriate. That's not legal. That doesn't make people feel secure in their jobs. But talking about making sure that we are looking at our staffing in a way that means that we have what we need to sustain, if sustaining is where we want to be, or to grow, if growing is where we want to be. Also being realistic that sustaining is sometimes exactly what you want. That's the beauty of being mission-driven, that you're not always on a growth progress, that sustaining is wonderful too. So to make sure that we have that, also looking at when we are bringing in people to work with us, to work with you, we want to make sure that they are the right people. So there is a process that we do for bringing people in, and it slows things down. I will admit it does slow things down, that we look at first, what's the job description? When there is an opening, what's the job description? Does it still apply? Does that need to be changed? And then we look at what type of new things or different things can we do with that position. And then we start looking for the people. And that's a wider net, and we narrow that down. And something I'm sure a lot of you are aware of is that when you're working with a church, there are a lot of people who are vulnerable, and that we have to make sure that the people we're bringing on have appropriate backgrounds to work with people who are more vulnerable, especially with children. So after we find that person that we really like, and we do a regular background check, talking to their employees, we have to do a live scan. And a live scan is a fingerprinting process that goes through, local, state, county, and federal, to make sure that the people that we are bringing on campus do not have a past that would make what they're working for inappropriate. So it's in our hopes to keep people safe. And that's why when we say, oh yeah, we're hiring, we are. It's a process, and I can't legally have somebody go to live scan until we have offered, negotiated, and they have accepted the position. And then I send them to get fingerprinted. And what a live scan does, which is different than regular fingerprinting, is if something else comes up in the future, I get information about that. So if this person were to be found guilty of a crime, that's the live in the live scan, is then I am informed of that. And then we can make a decision if that person is still appropriate to be working here. That's, part of the technical leading towards the adaptive, just making sure that we have the right people working to make sure that either the sustainability or the growth that we're looking at can continue.
And just to update, because we do have some positions that we have been working on. As Ginger mentioned, we will have a communications coordinator starting in January, and
we have a person who is going through the live scan process for the interim director of spiritual exploration. Mm-hmm. So that is, hopefully, all goes well, we'll have a more formal announcement shortly.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Now, there are other positions here that have been open, and those are part of this adaptive change process where we're evaluating what those job responsibilities are and how that fits in, and taking insight from and collaborating with you as a congregation and determining that. So we're going to continue to work on some of those staffing updates.
Omega, may I add one thing in?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so as we were speaking of our interim director of spiritual exploration, or as Omega said, other churches refer to that as religious education, a really interesting national statistic was that religious education enrollment had increased by 16% for the first time in a decade. And so there is a really large interest in children and families wanting to find spiritual places for their children to be. And I do see that at Neighborhood. I don't know if I can say 16% exactly at Neighborhood, but we have families that are here, and we are so excited that they are. And so we will encourage you to find ways to connect with our interim spiritual exploration director and eventually our settled director to volunteer and to support that, because there is an extreme amount of energy behind that right now, and interest. And so we want Neighborhood to be a place where, as those new families are coming in, we have enough teachers, we have enough advisors, we have enough volunteers to be here to support them. And so I will ask you all to spend some time and maybe think about whether that is a place that you feel might be right for you to get involved with. But really exciting, that kind of came out of nowhere in a way. It was declining and declining and declining nationally, and just has really spiked up in the last year, and continuing to go up in this year. So really exciting stuff to look forward to.
Right, and I heard you give the announcement this morning that next week we'll start back with our spiritual exploration classes. So for children and youth, they'll start back into class. Of course, children and youth are always welcome to spend the morning with us here in the sanctuary as well. What we don't have in place yet are childcare workers for the youngest. That doesn't mean we won't. We just have to wait until we have a supervisor for them, which would be our interim DRE. And so we're working on this. There are lots of pieces to the puzzle, so bear with us as we get that. That is a priority for us, that we continue to have childcare, but there is a process that we have to go through to do that.
And I think something to express how we work together is we do meet together a lot. We do share information together a lot to make sure that we're not missing things. A concrete example is if someone reaches out to me and says something about their pledge and not being able to make their pledge, I'll often say, hey, can I share this? Can I share this information? And maybe that's information that requires that pastoral care speaks with the person, or maybe it's a conversation with Ginger. But it's a shared conversation to make sure that we're not missing things, that people aren't falling through the cracks. So we do meet together quite a bit. We have very open communications. We do share ideas a lot. And the really kind of great thing, I honestly, I sometimes come up with off-kilter ideas. And I'll walk in and say, hey, I have a crazy idea. What if we? And I think there's an openness enough to say, no, Elizabeth, that's a crazy idea. And respectfully.
I'm not sure. I don't think that's ever happened. I think every idea you've had has been fantastic.
Yes. I think some of them are a little off. But there is the trust to be able to communicate, to be vulnerable enough to be able to say, I have this idea. And there's enough respect to go back and forth to have the conversation about it. And then to say, you're right, that's not a great idea. We'll just keep that, see if it pops up again in the future. And I think that's a really exciting thing about the leadership model and the working model that we have here, is that people feel comfortable coming up with ideas for the future, for right now, and to share them, to debate them, and to see where the strengths and weaknesses are. And that's a really, it's a really wonderful atmosphere to work in.
That's great. And, we hope that extends all the way even to our folks who do tech, to our facilities folks. It really is a conversation about what it means to be part of a community in collaboration. We're working, I hope that you as congregational leaders feel that as well, that we have the opportunity to really engage and brainstorm and create and vision and aspire with you. Some of the things I'm looking at forward for this upcoming year as it relates to our spiritual development and worship. As you heard this morning or may have read in the newsletter, we'll be engaging with an all-campus, all-congregation read towards the end of January and the beginning of February. And we're going to practice what it means to tell stories, the importance of stories in our lives, what that means for our faith development. We'll continue, Ginger and I and the new leadership that is coming in, to work with you in creating opportunities for spiritual growth. One of the things I also wanted to highlight, I was hearing you talk about participation on Sundays and what that means. And Elizabeth, you highlighting that we have a large community that isn't here on Sunday mornings. There are a lot of folks who only participate with Neighborhood Church during the week or in other activities that actually aren't here on Sunday mornings. So folks who participate in chalice circles, other small group ministry projects, our music folks are here throughout the week. Also, we have our young adults that meet on Wednesdays. We're going to be having some upcoming opportunities to meet on Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month, in a Zen group. We'll be having some other opportunities for engagement around meals. What that means is there's a vibrancy here of activity, and the folks who are participating really does extend beyond Sunday mornings. So while I am very thankful and thrilled to be a part of this worship on Sunday mornings, I find it important both for the ritual aspect, for the community building. There are other ways that we also fulfill our religious faith, spiritual development in groups and individually, so I really want to lift those up. So we'll be looking at some extended ways that we can be doing that together. Some of the other work that I'll be partnering with you all in the congregation and our board, starting in January, is the redevelopment of a right relations team. Here at this church. There has been a right relations team in the past. We're going to reinvigorate what that means. Right relations, a right relations team is comprised of members of this community who help navigate, set boundaries, and enter conversations when covenant has been broken or on the verge of being broken, for really creating a community here where people are engaged in conversation and in covenant. So those words that I read at the beginning that come again as we re-enter covenant, that right relations team will be fundamental in that. So I'll be engaging with you all, with our board, in the recreation of a right relations team coming up next year. So we have some exciting projects ahead in the year, ways that we will continue to sustain. I love that you highlighted that, Elizabeth, too, about sometimes sustaining is what is important. You've heard us talk about growth. I would encourage us to think about growth, and I hope that you would agree with this, that growth is great, but growth is a byproduct of vibrancy and health. So we want to work towards vibrancy and health, and growth is an outcome of that. We don't want growth for growth's sake if it's not vibrant and it's not healthy, right? So we're going to be working towards health and vibrancy, and sometimes that means sustaining and re-strengthening. And I think that we would all agree that we find that to be tremendously important as well as we work towards growth, if that feels like the right outcome that we're aiming for. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we close our conversation this morning?
Pretty much it.
I hope that you've heard from us that we enjoy working together. We enjoy working with you. We love strategizing and aspiring together. We're excited about this work that we do. People who work in churches don't accidentally work in churches. Well, I hope that that's the case. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone. There is an importance to being involved in mission-based work that is important, and it is about the partnership that we create together and that we create with you to make amazing things happen. I hope that you've heard that this morning. Okay, great. So we're going to close out our service here with one more hymn. It is a favorite of Unitarian Universalists. It's a favorite of mine. If you're not familiar with it, we invite you to join us. We're going to be singing our closing hymn, 1064, Blue Boat Home. And I will step away from the microphone so that my voice isn't projected too loudly. We got there. We got there. As we depart this morning, let us hold within our hearts the fire of this chalice here, a chalice that reminds us of the power of what we can do in community. Hold on to those hopes, cultivate intentionality in our work, and be inspired by a vision of a future that we all co-create together. May it be so. you.